afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome you very warmly on behalf of Reliance Foundation, the Observer Research Foundation, and the United Nations India Office to this discussion today. We're looking forward to discussing with you about the topic of women, SDGs, and technology. And we have a wonderful range of speakers today, a couple of panel discussions, and a wonderful keynote and valedictory address. In terms of the overview for the event today, a few logistical points just before we get started. We will be recording the event, and we'll be sharing a copy of the recording with all of you as well, in case you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues who haven't been able to join today. If you would like to follow us on social media, you can follow our handles for Reliance Foundation, the Observer Research Foundation, and the United Nations India Office. To welcome everybody formally to the event, I would like to introduce first Mr. Jagannatha Kumar from Reliance Foundation.
A very good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of Reliance Foundation, Observer Research Foundation, and UNICEF, welcome you all once again to this gathering where we are going to discuss women, technology, and SDGs, which is an important and timely topic today. SDG 5, as all of us know, is critical to achieving intrinsic and in terms of success of every goal that we have under the SDGs. It has a cascading impact in terms of what we achieve in SDG 5 and many other SDGs. It's established that areas where women and girls have access to opportunities and are empowered to fulfill their aspirations, there is a cascading impact with a wide range of successful outcomes in various other sectors. Technology in its various forms continues to redefine and transform the way we live and work. It's an enabler. Harnessing technology for us is going to enable us to achieving gender parity in the time that we are trying to target to achieve our SDGs in the next few years. India is set to have 1 billion smartphones in the next 4 years' time. At this point of time in India, when we look at women, the penetration of smartphones, or actually the phones, mobile phones, about 54% of Indian women have their own personal mobile phones, which is a significant improvement from 45.9% over 4 years ago. If we keep this momentum, I think we are going to see a significant progress over the next 7 or 8 years to our 2030 SDG targets. In terms of achieving many other things that women can achieve through whatever empowerment that they can get by use of technology. Studies demonstrate that technology is a crucial enabler in terms of driving knowledge, driving independence, giving employment opportunities, incomes, and self-confidence. I think we have a responsibility here to bridge the gender-digital divide at a much faster pace. Girls and women in rural areas often face gender-based restrictions on their use of information and communication technologies. When you read the stories that we are going to talk about, I think you will see a lot of demonstration of this. We need digital tools to boost women's participation, establish their agency and leadership in the digital space so that they can become leaders and active agents of change. What we bring to you today are the stories of women from remote regions of India who have gone from using a phone for the first time a few years ago to becoming technology advocates and social change catalysts in their communities. Aspirations, access, and agency. Women Transforming Lives Through Technology in India is the book that captures these stories. That's the book we are going to be talking about a little bit more later in the afternoon. These are stories of women who have made it their mission to lead their communities into a new digital future. They have overcome odds, defied tradition, acquired digital literacy and competencies, earned their community's trust, and then transform lives with technology. These stories show the potential for how leadership of women and use of technology can significantly enhance the pace of development and in helping the achievement of our SDGs. At Reliance Foundation, we believe when women rise, families flourish, and communities grow, and countries prosper. A vision driven by our founder, chairperson, Mrs. Nita Ambani. Across all our work, empowering women is a cross-cutting theme for us, and we are also supporting various initiatives to ensure technology inclusion and digital inclusion for women, to foster further growth in terms of whatever we need to achieve. Today marks the beginning of what we hope will become a regular annual event during UNGA Week to showcase solutions and experiences from India and learnings of similar journeys elsewhere. We hope these powerful stories and experiences of development from India would offer lessons to all and would catalyze similar efforts in our other countries. The intrinsic value of sharing and learning and the spirit of partnership are crucial ingredients in this decade of action. Thank you, and we look forward to very engaging and enriching discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagannatha. I would now like to invite Mr. Shambi Shah, UN Resident Coordinator for India, to come and give welcome remarks as well.
Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, my former boss, Excellency Alan Clark, Amandeep, Jagannath, Samir is running around here somewhere, Anita, so many familiar, friendly faces here and so many new faces looking forward to make friends. It's really a great honor on behalf of the United Nations system in India to join you and to thank the co-organizers, Reliance Foundation and ORF. I'll start with a little bit of Hindi if I may try. Aaj ki charcha bahut mahatvapurn hai. Nari Shakti se badi koi Shakti nahi. Better translation, there is no power like women's power, basically. So this is such an important discussion here today. I think that in the less than 1 year that I've had the honor to serve in India, I've had the opportunity to travel around many different parts of such a vast and diverse country. And many things have stood out, for sure, but I would like to mention 3 things that have really stood out to me most impressively. First is that India has embraced the SDGs more than any other country I've seen. And one can probably judge by the color of my hair. In the 20 years with the UN, I've seen many countries. So I can really say honestly that the level to which, the degree to which India has embraced the SDGs from the community to the central government to the top leadership, starting of course with Prime Minister Modi, the list and of tools and measures and programs is truly impressive. And what we're now starting to call the Indian model of SDG localization is gaining wider recognition. We had a wonderful event at HLPF on that here this summer. Now, and I'm pleased to say that the Resident Coordinator's Office was a sort of a founding partner with Government of India in that journey, the SDG India Index, for example. UNDP has joined more recently in that story, and all of our UN agencies are coming together on the ground to help deliver the SDGs. The second is, and for maybe lack of a better phrase, I'm not sure what to call it, but a uniquely whole-of-society approach. An effective combination of good, old-fashioned, human-centered, community-level outreach, powered by people, that is empowered by cutting-edge technology and a public digital infrastructure, digital public goods, running on the rails of an integrated national tech stack. And this is also, I think, something that is gaining global recognition. Now, and while this combination was designed to tackle longer-term development challenges and has served to help lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, it has also proven vitally important in providing a robust social and economic resilience truly last mile, leaving no one behind, in the face of these rapid emergent shocks, from the COVID pandemic to climate change and more. This, I think, is an important lesson, especially in the last couple of years. So while the impact in India of these crises has certainly been felt, and as with every other country in the world, we've seen that HDI, human development indicators, have felt that, have declined in the last 2 years. The impact would have been so much worse without such a robust social protection system. The third is the amazing role that women are playing in this story. Now, the Prime Minister speaks about women-led development, and the government has an impressive number of flagship mission programs backing that vision up. And I've had the opportunity in my travels to meet so many of women heroes on the ground at the community level, from the ASHA workers who received global recognition from the World Health Organization recently, to the Anganwadi workers who, together, going door to door, household to household, staffing community clinics, making sure that babies are not missing their routine vaccinations, even during the worst days of the pandemic, and ensuring food security through the public distribution system. To the many different women-led cooperatives. For example, had the pleasure to meet with Seva and Elevat, and to appreciate the over 1 million women who were able to keep their families and their micro-businesses afloat by shifting en masse to digital banking in the midst of the crisis, turning a crisis into an opportunity. So I think that really women are manning, and I guess we need a better word for that, the front lines, both of the long-term development and of the crisis response and resilience, doing the courageous heavy lifting. This is the face of women in India and in countries across the world. Now, as we will hear shortly in this fabulous publication produced by the Reliance Foundation and ORF, and as we've also, UNESCO came out with a publication earlier this year called A Braided River, women are also playing an important role in developing the science and the technology that is making much of this possible. For example, we can look at the Pharmacy to the World, India's role in the largest vaccine drive in the world for COVID. So UN Women, for example, is prioritizing women's economic empowerment and social enterprises in the STEM fields, I could mention as well. And again, every single one of our agencies is engaged in partnering with the government, with communities, with business, with civil society around these important issues. So to conclude, I will say that I'm very pleased and proud that we are finalizing the next 5-year UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. Gender equality, women's empowerment, and harnessing the power of technology is at the core of this partnership offer between the United Nations and India. So I'll conclude there. Thank you so much, Anita.
No, I was just laughing because you brought women at the center.
Absolutely at the center. And just, to say that there are so many emerging best practices in development solutions within India. And we're availing the fact that we have offices in over 17 different states. We have over 4,000 staff across the country who are witnessing what's happening in India. And we're using that network to more and more identify and codify Indian best practice and Indian knowledge and stories, and helping bring that to the global stage. Conversations such as the one we're having here today, India's long-term support to South-South cooperation, and of course the upcoming presidency in the G20 are all really, really effective platforms to continue to share this story for the benefit of others. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shamli. So this afternoon, we're really delighted to share with you our new publication that Reliance Foundation and Observer Research Foundation have developed, Aspirations, Agency and Access, Women Transforming Lives Through Technology. This book tells the story of ordinary women across India and how they're using technology in simple but impactful ways to transform their lives, the lives of their families and the lives of their communities, To give you a small teaser of the publication, we're going to show a quick video, and I hope you'll all take the opportunity to take a copy of the book from the back of the room at the end of the event, and it's also available on our website. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Amandeep Singh Gill, Undersecretary General, Envoy for Technology for the UN, to formally launch the publication and give the keynote address.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Helen Clark, former Prime Minister, Dr. Samir Saran, President ORF, there you are, Dr. Jagannath, President Reliance Foundation, my dear colleague, Assistant Secretary General Anita Bhatia from UN Women, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here today to launch this publication, the result of hard work by your colleagues and a very inspiring outcome. The teaser that we saw, and I had the opportunity to go through the book in its online version, and I invite all of you to take a copy and read it. It's really inspiring how, when you bring people, the right process and technology together, magic happens. Shombi talked about Nari Shakti, women's power. Actually, Shakti itself, the word for power in India, is feminine. So true power is feminine. And the other day with Anita, when we were launching the new definition for digital inclusion that my office has developed in partnership with UN Women and others, we were musing about where we have been today if the digital technology that we see had been designed more by women than by men. I think we would have less of the problems that we face today in terms of exclusion, in terms of some of the polarization that we see. And we need to make sure that the future of tech is more feminine than it has been so far. this is particularly important as we move from this age of devices, connectivity, digital public infrastructures, important as they are, to the age of data and AI, where digital as a broad front moves into complex social domains: health, education, agriculture and food security, dealing with humanitarian emergencies. These are not simple issues that you can reduce to bits, zeros and ones. You need transdisciplinary thinking, you need collaboration, something that women excel at, and therefore there will not be a safe, inclusive, open, free digital future for all without women's participation. The stories of sheroes, as the book describes them, are inspiring. From women who are helping others access public services, to those who are building businesses using digital technology. The rise in numbers in terms of mobile phone ownership, in terms of access to the internet, is impressive, but I must say there is a long way to go. There are still significant sociocultural barriers where families co-own, co-operate devices. Women and girls still come at the end of the queue in many, many cases. And then independent ownership, which is crucial to agency, one of the things that I liked in the title, that needs to grow even more. There was a time when we were naive about the internet. There was a time when there was a lot of idealism. And in the global north, there is now a degree of cynicism, a degree of concern about where we are. It's good to see that there is another narrative which is based on idealism. And this narrative is coming from the global south. And this narrative is being shaped by women. So today's event inspires us, gives us hope. And I want to end by congratulating those who are behind this, those who put hard work into this, on this significant outcome. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with next. Thank you so much.
I'm speaking quickly, we can't release it.
So the publication that we put together shows the tremendous potential that exists for technology to help accelerate the progress towards achieving SDGs, and particularly SDG 5, gender equality. And the stories show how at the grassroots in India, women are transforming lives and communities when they're able to get access to technology. What we'd like to discuss in a little bit more detail now is some of the larger takeaways that we can deduce from these individual experiences, and discuss some of the ways in which governments, corporations and foundations can help contribute towards this by catalysing wider and deeper transformation. And these are stories from India, but we think that these stories have potential to share lessons and insights that have broader applicability as well. So what are some of the things that we can learn from this publication that could be replicable in other contexts, and what likewise can we learn from other countries that can be beneficial in India? So I'm delighted to introduce our esteemed panel today, beginning with Helen Clark, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, former UNDP Administrator, patron of the Helen Clark Foundation, and Board and Chair of the Partnership for Maternal and Newborn and Child Health. Helen, we're really honoured to have you with us here today. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much. Great to be here. I'm wearing two hats. One is Partnership for Maternal, Newborn and Child Health, and the other, the Club de Madrid, I think, which first put this on my agenda. We're a club of former heads of state and government from democracies, and we actually do quite a lot of dialogue and discussion around the role of the digital sphere and its impact on democracy and functioning today, which can be both good and bad, as we know, which is another whole subject. Just before going to the substance of the issues, I just want to endorse what Shombi Sharp said about India embracing SDGs, and go back even further to say that from the time that UNDP launched the very first Human Development Report in 1990, India became the greatest champion in the world of human development reporting. And I became very aware when I was at UNDP that, it wasn't just the national government, it was the state government. It was going right down through the hierarchy of administration that India embraced human development as a concept. So thank you so much for the support that India gave to the agenda.
Thanks, Helen. So one of the things I was interested to sort of ask you about, given your experience, particularly with healthcare as well, is that a number of the women in the publication talk about how they have used technology to help improve health outcomes in their community. And over these last couple of years, both in India and around the world, what we've seen is that the use of health-based apps and platforms has gained significant acceleration and momentum during the pandemic. How can we maintain this momentum? And most importantly, what can we do to ensure that we get more access for marginalised communities as well?
So, necessity is the mother of invention, is the old phrase. And when COVID came along, it really sped up the transition to digital medicine and healthcare, if you like, because when people were more or less confined to their homes, how else to get information and support around. So we saw tremendous innovation in the health space. There's one survey PMNCH drew my attention to, 71 countries, 58% of health professionals in those countries had used telemedicine to maintain essential health services. Now, I know if you come to someone like Kaiser Permanente here in the United States, they'll say that their primary care consultations have gone well over 90% online now. That's how important it has become. For PMNCH itself, which was putting up quite a lot of guidance, not only on COVID, but on a whole lot of other issues relevant to women's, children's and adolescents' health. Of course, we can reach far more people through social media and digital means than we ever could with putting something in the mail or a poster on a table. But then the key issue becomes the access, doesn't it? And already the presentations have talked about access. I remember years ago when I was at UNDP, the head of the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, and Rita Bakova, head of UNESCO, launched a broadband commission. And it was focused on this gap. And I worked with UN Women at the time, chairing a subcommittee on women and access to digital. And women don't have the same access. So, here's the big challenge for us, to make sure that women are connected. Because if you're not connected, it's not just now that you won't get your health information. You need it for education. You need to access government services. You need it as a citizen. You need it for financial services, as we saw here. So we began to talk even in those earlier years with the Commission about a right to broadband, a right to connectivity, a human right. Because if you don't have it, you can't participate in the society the way you need to. So that's how important it is.
And what do you think we need to do to ensure that digital healthcare solutions are better designed to reach the realities of women and girls in grassroots communities, so that it's, once they have access, that these applications are more intuitive, more usable for them?
Well, very good point, and already in the discussion we've heard this morning, we've heard it reiterated again, that women are less present in the STEM subjects, which are the conveyor belts into AI design, digital engineering platforms and so on. And so a lot of the algorithms are designed by men and not with women's needs in mind. So first thing is we need more women in these sectors and influencing design. Secondly, I think for anything to be usable, user-friendly, you have to hear the voices of those you're trying to serve. What is it that women want? What is it that women and girls want from these applications? And if you design in a gender-blind way, you're not going to get applications serve the needs of women at all. So I think that's the two things, the full consultation, including with the most marginalised, who one needs to reach, what do they need, and then having more women who are, have the skills to be the designers.
Thanks, Helen. I'd now like to introduce Anita Bhatia, the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations and Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. Anita, thank you so much for joining us today as well. In the book, we see that many of the women have benefited from support from either government or social sector organisations that have helped catalyse their journey towards getting access to digital and technology and different ways in which they can use it. Given your experience, how do you think we can better leverage or design public-private partnerships to support strategies in some of these areas, particularly around not just gender equality, but also financial inclusion, which are really critical for achieving our SDGs?
Thank you very much, Vanita. Let me start by just saying first a really big thank you and congratulations to the Indian Consulate, to the organizers of today's event, the UN in India, the Observer Research Foundation, and the Reliance Foundation for bringing us together for a really important conversation. The General Assembly is such a mad, wonderful time because it gives us an opportunity to actually showcase some of those multi-stakeholder partnerships that are vital to achieving the SDGs. Because although the primary participants are governments, it's also a platform to bring together the private sector, civil society, think tanks and others. And to me, this event really epitomizes that multi-stakeholder public-private partnership that you're alluding to, Vanita, because the problems that we have today for women are so complex and so multifaceted that there is no single actor, whether it's the state or the private sector or civil society, who can do this on their own. It is fantastic to see that the UN in India is leading on this in such a big way with the support of partners like Reliance. And I really, really want to congratulate you from the Reliance Foundation for taking on the issue of women in technology, because it's not necessarily obvious that one should. Her Excellency Helen Clark talked about the Broadband Commission, which was something that some time ago was already addressing this issue. But it really matters that companies like Reliance take this on, because it's all very well for UN officials to talk about this, but unless there are private sector partners on the ground who are really making sure that their approaches, their products, and their policies are driving inclusion, including financial inclusion, that's the only way we're going to change this. So I want to say a couple of things about SDG 5 in particular, because this is about women, technology, and the SDGs. And the SDGs, are this aspirational state of the world. And one of the things about women in SDG 5 is that it covers many different aspects of gender equality. Financial inclusion, absolutely key, of course, Vanita, and I am so proud of the fact that I can go to panels and say, do you know that during the pandemic, 200 million women in India were able to get cash because India had invested in a national ID system and these women could be found. Because, face it, for most of the developing world, women are in the informal sector, they don't have identification numbers, it is hard to find them. So how do you get services to people you can't find? So the fact that India has had these major investments makes it possible for us to have financial inclusion. And of course, technology is such a huge part of India's brand, and I'm so proud of this. And it's not just because the heads of all the major tech companies in the US happen to be Indian, by the way, maybe men so far. But it's not just that. It is just that India has embraced this agenda in a way, that few other countries have. Now for me, the real test is going to be not necessarily around financial inclusion, though I think that is incredibly important because so many women are unbanked, and the moment that they are banked, this leads to all sorts of collateral goods because it has a spillover domino effect. Once they get access to funding, they can grow their businesses, they can feed their households better. So I don't want to go into why that's so important. But here is the thing that technology hasn't done yet. So, I want to throw out a challenge, actually, for all of the stakeholders who are in this group. We don't yet have a solution to violence against women from technology. We will know that technology is a real force for good when it is able to solve the problem or contribute to solving the problem, not just of online violence against women, but actual physical violence against women. And that's only going to happen if we are able to use technology to help shatter some of the norms, stereotypes, and prejudices that lead to violence against women in the first place. And when you are able to leverage technology to make sure that you are educating all of the kids who have been left behind through the pandemic. The learning poverty for girls in India is real and it is staggering. We have not had the situation that some countries have had, like Peru and the Philippines, where kids have not been in school for 2 years. But the pandemic's impact on girls' learning in India is huge. So technology has to be leveraged for that as well, because these are foundational building blocks towards including women in a future which is more sustainable than the world that they're living in now. So I really appreciate your question, Vanita, but I also want to really flag that financial inclusion is important, but there's a whole lot more that we need to do through technology that will, and only through doing those can we really say technology's become a great contributor to helping SDG 5 become something real. Thanks very much.
Thanks, India. And I agree. I think we have to look much more broadly, and particularly post-pandemic as well. Are there any particular innovative strategies and policies that you think either government or foundations should be looking at in the years ahead to help accelerate our progress towards SDG 5, and particularly where we can leverage technology?
One, education. I think just making sure that girls, many of whom will never go back to school. I shudder to think, and I haven't seen the latest data on the rates of child marriage, because you know that when girls are not in school, many of them are going to be married off. And so I think there is a link between access to education and child marriage, obviously. And so I think using platforms to make sure that we are getting girls back into school, that we're giving them education digitally is incredibly important. I think giving women training for capacity building, for e-commerce, I think is incredibly important. Helping formalization, because so many women live in the informal sector, and helping to grow them out of the informal economy into the informal economy, but also supporting business and household income growth in the informal economy is incredibly important, because frankly the journey to formalization is very long and difficult. So I think that can make a big difference. UN Women launched last year something called the Action Coalition on Innovation and Technology, and platforms like that which bring together a whole host of partners. I don't know if Reliance Foundation is part of it, but if not, please join. And we'd love to have you join this multi-stakeholder global effort to keep to keep stakeholders focused on the right things. I do think what my friend Dr. Gill mentioned in terms of making sure that digital inclusion includes a feminist lens and a gender lens is very important. That is an innovation, because just driving those principles even in the UN system and making sure gender is at the heart of everything the UN system is doing is also an ongoing piece of work. It's work in progress. So thank you so much for that. I think we need to do that. And then finally, I really think that it is very important for us to think about the unfinished work of gender equality, whether it is, look, we've made lots of progress on inclusion. Of course, we can do more. We've made progress on leadership. We can do more. And I come back to this over and over again. The one thing that we have not got a solution to yet in the world, and whether it is WHO declaring it a public health emergency, but I would really like to see some thinking about how do you leverage technology to end once for all the shameful horror of violence against women.
Thank you. Thank you. I now like to introduce Anjali Kaur, who's a Deputy Assistant Administrator of the Bureau for Asia from USAID. Anjali, thank you so much for joining us today too.
Thank you.
So Anjali, around India, ICTs are impacting entrepreneurship and livelihoods in unprecedented ways. And the correlation that we see between mobile ownership and economic empowerment can often be striking. And it's something that I think we've both seen through the partnership that USAID and Reliance Foundation have in India, the Women Connect India Challenge, where we're helping to develop innovative solutions for addressing the gender digital divide. Both from that and from your more broader experience at USAID, what are some of the effective ways in which you feel development organizations can help empower and support women entrepreneurs?
Great, thank you so much. I feel like it's a great opening with our other two panelists here already describing the broader situation, which I think really helps. And we try to now hone in and I don't want to repeat any of the great points that are already made, but really hone in on what are some of the tactical things that we're doing that some of you are aware of, some of you are not, but also recognizing, look at our panel. One of the few non-manels that we have across UNGA, right, which I think is really important, but also who's in the room right now. So we see the level of interest, one. And many of you are probably already involved in this space and see what a difference it's already making. And so we think about what do we do to scale up? So one of our really exciting projects that you had highlighted is with the Reliance Foundation right now. It's Women Connect Challenge, which is essentially looking across 17 states in India, and we're focusing on what does the gender digital divide actually need to address in terms of priorities. And as we spoke about, the areas are so far-reaching beyond financial inclusion. It's civic participation, it's education, it's being able to access basic services, it's being able to have knowledge and literacy across your communities. And as you rightly said, how do we make technology that is shaped by society actually respond to the needs of society, respond to the needs day to day? So how do we get women closer to accessing, whether it's credit, closer to accessing technology to their homes, instead of making it so difficult that they can't exist in their normal day-to-day lives and also access technology? So what's exciting about Women Connect is that we do that through a number of different initiatives across. And there's apps that are across this Women Connect platform that are trying to engage women in the hardest to reach locations. So one of my favorite stories is of a farmer named Pramila in Koraput in Odisha, one of my favorite states. If you've been to Odisha, you know how beautiful it is. But you also know how hard to reach a number of women, tribal women especially, are. Not in just terms of technology, but in terms of basic services. So what this app specifically within this program does, Banashri, is that it allows women to connect to basic value chain of agriculture, right? So the minimum support price that's given to agricultural products, many of us are not aware of it. Most women farmers are not aware of it, but it's accessible online. So what we see and what Pramila saw is that through this app, during her harvest season, like crops of tamarind that were coming out, she saw that, listen, this tamarind crop specifically is selling for 36 rupees per kilo. And this is what the online minimum support price is telling me, but all the traders are offering me 23 rupees. So what can I now do? Use my collective of women in my village, in my community, to go and bargain for what is the right fair price. And that is now supported by evidence, it's supported by data, but then you have a whole community recognizing that, one, they've got decision-making skills here. They can lead the charge. And how does it dramatically improve their household income as a result? And we've all seen this. When you can make this in your workforce, in your decision day-to-day force, in bringing money back to your house, it changes how you interact with your family. It changes how you interact with your partner, with your children, with your community. You know, and as was rightfully said in our keynote addresses, when a woman gets empowered, it not only improves her community, it improves the larger state, it improves the country, and therefore improves the world, right? So as a woman, and not even women as a whole, but as a woman rises, the world rises. We've heard this quote so many times, but we're now seeing it into action. So I just wanted to highlight one of these examples of how technology can actually be integrated into your day-to-day life, into your workforce in a way, and what we're trying to do is not only engage women to increase their workforce participation, but we're trying to make it easier for them. And we make it easier by showing them that we've got tools that are meeting them at their doorstep. And so that's one of the things that we're so excited about, Women Connect, being able to do together with us, but also excited that we're going to go on to our next challenge in the next couple of weeks and renew this partnership and expand. And what we hope to do is expand across India.
Nice.
Thanks, Angela. Anjali, from your broader experience at USAID as well, are there any other initiatives that you've been supporting both in India or internationally that have some great insights for us, particularly around women's entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing a great project with MasterCard, which is Project Kirana, which is specifically, and if those of you who know India know the little Kirana shops, which are so important. So let's think about the small and medium enterprises. And we use these Kirana shops and specifically train women on business operations. So it goes from everything from how to be able to make digital payments, right? So what we've noticed after COVID is that everybody's gone digital. It's cheaper, it's more accessible, it makes sense, it's low cost, right? So how do we teach them how to build credit history, how to create digital interactions, how to create business operation plans, all of the basics that maybe were passed generation to generation to men, to certain communities, but not to these women who have never had access to this lifestyle, to this culture of business. And a Kirana shop is the best and easiest access point if we enable to give them tools to do so. So really excited about that. And you know what we'd like to say is the private sector is this open marketplace for us to partner with on technology and on development technology across a number of fronts. And it doesn't need to be just financial inclusion, as you rightly highlighted. It should be across a number of fronts. So what we try to do with USAID is that we've got far-reaching programs that touch every aspect of a woman, a girl's, a whole family's life. So how do we make sure that we insert that digital component into our programs as a whole? Because it does increase the accessibility of the program, but it also increases the digital literacy. So how do we make sure that women are aware of the social inclusion programs, of the programs that are meant for them to be able to access as widows, as old age pension schemes, whatnot, but make them more accessible through these elements. And so digital literacy has become one of our key tools to being able to change the face of development as a whole. And so we hope to do that across our development programs.
Great, thanks, Anjali. Now to take the conversation a little bit broader, I'm pleased to introduce Sylvia G. Meyer, who's Clinical Associate Professor in the Center for Global Affairs at New York University. Hi, Sylvia, thanks so much for joining us too. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Hi, Vanita. Thank you so much for these wonderful introductory remarks, and thank you for inviting me to join this esteemed panel. I would like to start by sharing with you a few data points. On average, women enjoy about 76% of the economic rights of men. In 50% of countries, women are unable to assert equal land and property rights. 63 countries in the world, that's about 235 million people, do not prohibit sexual harassment or gender discrimination around the world. In 18 countries, husbands are legally allowed to prohibit their wives from working outside the home. Each year, about 14 million children are married as children, either to an adult or another child, for a total of about 650 million women alive now having been married as a child. In the Middle East, one of the regions in which I have the privilege of working, the workforce participation rate of women is about 27%. On average, women have about a 20% lower literacy rate than men. Now, why am I sharing these rather harrowing numbers? First and foremost, to show the complexity and the multi-layeredness of gender inequality, and thus the need for comprehensive approaches to dismantling these pervasive structures of inequality, and the need for an intersectional approach to dismantle these structures of inequality, and to highlight, and we have already heard that from previous panelists, the key role that technology can and does play in assisting the dismantling of these structures of inequality. So what are some of the problems from a more general perspective? One, persistent discriminatory social and cultural norms are holding women back. Secondly, weak implementation of laws because of insufficient capacity, and most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, a lack of political will to implement and enforce laws on the book. And we'll see that in all countries around the world, including in this country. Last but not least, a lack of understanding of the laws and poor access to legal services to protect these laws or to enforce these laws. I have been asked by Vanita to share possibly some of the success stories and maybe some recommendations from countries in the Middle East, especially in the Gulf countries, that have successfully addressed these examples of structural inequalities and have successfully addressed or provided new frameworks for at the national level for a more egalitarian approach to gender equity. The countries that I work mostly in are the UAE, Qatar, the KSA, and to a lesser degree, Rwanda. And allow me in the next few minutes to share some thoughts on successful approaches on how social and cultural barriers can be successfully challenged. There are 6 recommendations that I would like to draw everybody's attention to. The pursuit, of course, of gender equality differs from country to country. But one of the connecting threads, if you will, that unite all of these countries' success stories is the making of gender equality as an explicit strategic goal of governments. So this is to say, the pushing and the prioritization of gender equality as a strategic government goal is indispensable. What flows from that? Backing up this commitment with institutional and legal frameworks. So for instance, the creation of institutions such as ministries for women's affairs, such as the adoption of laws, as was pointed out, to address gender-based violence, for instance, to address inequalities in family law, to make sure that women have access to financial resources or to financial credit, the opportunity for women and to ensure that women have direct access to services and do not need to go through their spouses or their family members. So this is to say mainstream gender into all government processes. Fourthly, make gender equity a consistent and credible part of official communications. This is to say, push or promote gender equity and gender equality as a very specific and a very principled government objective. Work to change public and private attitudes and behavior. This is probably the most difficult thing to achieve, but it is possible. It is possible through the generation of male allyship, through the recruitment of influencers, for instance, to shift the discourse, to shift the perception of what it means to be a male ally and what needs to still be done to promote true gender equity. A perfect example for this, for instance, is the White Ribbon Campaign. Some of you may remember this. It was a global campaign against violence against women. Work with civil society and philanthropic organizations as, for instance, the Reliance Foundation. But most importantly is really to listen to the women and to listen to the grassroots. What are the needs of the women? What are their priorities? And build it from there. It is a long-term, achieving gender equality, we all know, is a long-term strategy. So we have to be consistent. We have to keep our eye on the ball. And overall, the credit really goes, especially in the countries in the Middle East, to the women. The government can only do so much, but the credit really has to go to the women who are brave and courageous, who are challenging cultural norms and traditions that would relegate them to second-class status, overcome harassment, overcome hatred, overcome incredible obstacles, and for taking it upon themselves, really, with these enabling mechanisms in place, clearly, to realize the full potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And now, last but not least, I'm pleased to introduce Teetha Wald, who's the Deputy Managing Director for Better Than Cash Alliance. Thanks, Teetha, for joining us today. So I think just as a final question, one of the things that we observed through many of the stories that we developed through the publication is how smartphones enable women to be able to better control their own finances, to gain access to funds, to conduct instant transactions, to be able to manage their money for themselves, their families, and for their businesses. What are some of the experiences that you've had in terms of how we can generate financial inclusion much more effectively through technology and through digital inclusion? And what are some of the challenges that you've come across?
Thank you very much, and thank you for our organizers, both the Reliance Foundation and ORF. It's great to be among great friends. For those who don't know, Better Than Cash Alliance is a UN-based partnership of more than 80 governments, companies, and international organizations. We were launched exactly 10 years ago by Her Excellency Helen Clark, and we're proud to be here 10 years later. India joined the alliance 7 years ago with a clear mission to share a lot of the learnings, because as many mentioned here in this panel, India could win the world chairwomanship on digital financial inclusion and the incredible investment in infrastructure. We've seen it as well during the pandemic, as you rightly mentioned. Many developing countries, but also G20 countries, G7 countries really scrambled when COVID hit to find who are the people we need to pay. And India has been an incredible example, because within a click, they could reach so many people. And most of the time, we've been organizing big international symposiums, bringing governments from around the world to learn from the Indian example. And each time I can share, things have been oversubscribed because so many governments want to learn from the Indian example. We've got almost 50 governments already to learn from what India called the India Stack, the Jan Trinity, and so on. Where the government has reached out to us and said, where we still need to solve things is for, as you mentioned, the Kirana stores, the women who own businesses, merchants that have small mom-and-pop shops. And so we partnered 3 years ago with Unilever, and we've had a great partnership under the CEO of Unilever. We just launched a report yesterday with Her Excellency, the Minister of Finance, and the CEO of Unilever, and we went to see, how do we make that happen? And so we had, Unilever, and we had the UN, and we had road trainers, and we had lots of good intentions. And when we went to see those, many of them said, "Oh, this is digital stuff. Talk to my son." I'm like, "Oh, this is not what we intended." And what I really liked about this book, and I plan to take it to many of our partners, is that you went and you listened, and you asked them, what do you like about the product? What is working for you? What is not working for you? And so to answer your question, this is how we're going to solve for it. We're not going to solve for the exclusion part if we just design things in the Silicon Valley or in Bangalore. We're going to be really successful if we go and we speak to those women and we ask them, how do we solve your problem? And so what has been actually very successful was, first of all, to solve for digital ordering. And we only then could integrate a payment, although payment is our mission, because the ordering was very, very cumbersome for them. And that's something they immediately picked up. And so the interesting thing is that if the product is rightly designed, if it responds to a question, if it solves a problem, this is when women adopt it, and men as well. I have an 87-year-old father who is doing digital banking, and he said, it's more simple, it's less cumbersome than walking to the bank. I can actually make that happen, and I don't need to leave my couch. And if we design for people's capabilities, if we design products with women in mind, their needs, in local languages, then this is how it's going to work.
Great, thank you, Tina. I think we could continue this discussion for a lot longer, but I think that we'll probably need to wrap up slightly now and hopefully carry this on further after the event. But thank you so much, all of you, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.